Some big news emerged this week undercutting what we thought we knew about the story of football player Michael Oher. Oher is alleging his adoptive parents, Sean and Leigh Anne Tuohy, did not actually adopt him and that they enriched themselves by tricking him into signing a document putting him into a conservatorship. The story of Oher's apparent adoption became the subject of both the Michael Lewis book and award-winning film, The Blind Side. The film plays a role here, too. It made over $300 million at the box office. Oher says he didn't make any money from it and that he didn't know he wasn't actually adopted until February of this year, nearly 2 decades after he thought he was first adopted. As for the Tuohys, they have not yet filed a legal response, but they have continued to publicly call Oher their adoptive son. And Sean Tuohy spoke to local newspaper, the Daily Memphian, reacting to an ESPN story about Oher's filing. He denied making any money off the film, called the allegations, quote, insulting, and said, "It's upsetting to think we would make money off any of our children, but we're going to love Michael at 37, just like we loved him at 16. There are a lot of accusations and contradicting details to unpack here. Luckily, we have someone who has worked through a lot of them. Michael Fletcher is a senior writer with ESPN's Enterprise and Investigative team. He wrote the ESPN story that walked readers through the details of Oher's court filing and that Sean Tuohy was responding to. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with this distinction between conservatorship versus adoption. This happened just after Oher turned 18. Why was there a conservatorship but no adoption, according to both Oher and Tuohy here?
Well, Oher says that the conservatorship was put in place as a way to sort of to give the Tuohys control over his affairs. And an adoption would have been a straight adoption. He would have been part of the family, and and thus held on to his agency. He would have his own power of attorney. But under the conservatorship, that didn't happen, and the Tuohys held that. And the Tuohys said that was at the time. Michael Oher understood that to be the only way toward adoption. He thought it was a step toward adoption. Remember, he's a high school senior. And, he didn't really know better, and he trusted them.
Yeah. Oher says he missed out on a cut of the money from the Blind Side film. The Tuohys say they didn't make money off the movie. To borrow a line from All the President's Men, let's follow the money here. Who got paid from Oher's life story, and when did they get paid?
That's what we're going to have to see in court, because there, as you mentioned earlier, there are conflicting stories here. Oher says he suspects that they made a lot of money. The Tuohys at first said they made no money, and then later today they said they made some money, but it was a very minor amount, and whatever they made, they shared with Michael Oher. So I think that question is going to have to be resolved in court. But the petition certainly says that Oher's lawyer uncovered a document that showed kind of the contract terms, and that the film company paid the Tuohys $225,000 plus 2.5% of essentially profits from the movie. And as we know, the movie grossed over $300 million, cost roughly $30 million to make. Obviously, there are other expenses, but it'll be interesting to see kind of what the accounting shows. And that's one of the things the legal petition asks for, kind of an accounting of the money made from the film and showing where the money went. And Oher says, he insists he got none of it. The Tuohys now say that we offered him some, we were going to give him some, he didn't take the money. They were calling this a shakedown. So it's interesting to see what transpires.
Yeah, this is something that really electrified social media when the story broke. In his interview with the Daily Memphian, Sean Tuohy said he'd be willing to end Oher's conservatorship and that, quote, "I want whatever Michael wants." Oher's complaint paints a very different picture. You know, this is a story that we have become familiar with, and one of the things I'm kind of curious about, especially considering how long they've been in each other's lives, is there any hope this could end quickly or amicably? I mean, how does something like this even end?
That's a great question. It feels like an amicable ending is not in the cards here because their stories are so diametrically opposed. I think who knows what will happen. The Tuohys have not yet filed a legal response, and that's the only kind that matters. They've certainly launched a public relations response so far, but it's hard to know. It's hard to know where this is going to go and exactly what the facts are. It'll be interesting to see what unfolds in court. Whether a settlement's in the cards, I really don't know. It's probably too early to say.
Yeah. Michael Fletcher is a senior writer for ESPN and author of the recent story on Michael Oher's lawsuit. Michael, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to reading more of your reporting.